So this session will focus on Stories of Transition, which is a series of online talks held every 3 months, where we hear stories from 3 different transition or other related groups from around Australia and the world. Attendees get to hear what different groups are currently doing and may be inspired to try similar ideas in their own area.
Thank you for that introduction. In Australia, we try and make sure that we start with what's called an acknowledgement of country, which is just a welcome into a space. So I'm just going to do this quickly. Transition Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands across the country in which local groups meet, work and thrive. We acknowledge the traditional custodians and pay respect to elders past and present. We acknowledge the Indigenous sovereignty and stewardship of this land over many tens of thousands of years and seek to accept the invitation spoken in the Uluru Statement from the Heart to walk together with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Indigenous sovereignty has never been ceded or extinguished. And I am coming currently and wish to acknowledge the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations, where I am from, and I'll just invite the other peoples in Australia just to either list it in the chat or let us know and acknowledge the country that they are on.
Yes, I'm from the Gadigal people.
And Peter?
The Wiradjuri people. The Tabaga people were Wiradjuri Nation.
And this is not only an important acknowledgement of an ongoing connection to land and sovereignty and stewardship of land that has lasted for many tens of thousands of years, but it's also, I think, a really good introduction into the concept of storytelling and connection from what was a culture that had a long and rich oral history. And the importance of stories and sharing to build the connections between people, something that we at Transition Australia really value and really want to promote. And in this session today, we're going to explore some of those stories, not only from things that have happened or are being done, but also with that sort of view of what could happen in the future as we face a changing climate. And certainly in Australia, as in many parts of the world, we're also facing climate instability and the many climatic issues, bushfires and floods that go along with that. The importance of telling stories, of dreaming a future, and of working together with strong community connections is super important. So I'll hand over to Kit to get it started.
Yeah, so just so you can get an overview of what we'll be doing. There are 3 main segments. Each of us will speak. Peter's going to speak first, then me, and then Paul. So the first segment will be looking at how the Stories of Transition in Australia came about, the when, the why, the how, and the what. Then I'll talk a bit about the substance of the projects that we've been hearing about in our panel presentations. And then Paul will talk about other aspects of the Australian situation that are very important and big picture. So we'll have a couple of screen breaks in between. You may want to dance. There's some beautiful music being selected, but it's a good idea to get your eyes off the screen and refresh yourselves in that way when the time comes.
I'm going to talk about the when, what, why, and how Stories of Transition sessions that have been run by Transition Australia. Okay, next slide. The idea behind the Stories of Transition is fairly basic. 3 times a year for the past 2 years, Transition Australia has held a series of online talks where we hear from 3 speakers from different transition and other related groups from around the country. We typically allow 7 minutes for each speaker to give a concise talk about their group, the activities they get up to, and how the group has evolved over the years. Following the speakers, we have time for a general discussion and questions and answers. The sessions all up take 1 hour and a quarter and are held on a Monday night. So far, we've held 6 sessions where we have heard the stories of 16 different groups from around Australia and 1 from overseas in England. Next slide. I'm now going to talk to you about the context behind the stories of transition. A few of us on the committee of Transition Australia would meet weekly on Zoom during and towards the end of the COVID lockdown period. It had felt like the transition movement in Australia was on hiatus and genuine contact with the individual groups around the country had been broken. The last face-to-face convergence occurred 3 years prior in September 2019, and a number of questions arose in our mind, like how many active transition groups are still out there? How are they going? And are they thriving or floundering? We felt like we needed to fire up the engines again after the long pause forced on community groups around the country. Australia, as many of you would know, is a large country. It is approximately 4,000 kilometres east to west and north to south. There are dozens of transition groups around Australia who have a diverse geography, climate and culture, but they all share similar aims of caring for the earth, connecting as groups and individuals, and building community resilience. Making connection and being aware of each group's presence is near impossible. Rather than individually contacting groups and checking up on their status, we thought we needed to go beyond that and create an online event where transition groups can reconnect without having to travel long distances to physically meet in person. We wanted an event that would reignite the spark that was so alive in the initial period of transition in Australia. Next slide, Paul. We're encouraged ourselves by the stories heard from documentaries, websites and blogs of the Transition Network and individual groups around the world. We wanted this brought home to an Australian context with Australian stories that would inspire individuals and groups from around our country. Technology has therefore come to our aid and helps us overcome the tyranny of distance. It widens our circle and joins dots, linking us through hearing each other's stories without having to be there in person. Hearing other stories on Zoom brings what is different and distant close to home. We hear the local and feel the global. Ideas are spread, cross-fertilization happens. Next slide. Groups that we've only distantly heard of now become individual people, and from there on we can imagine them warmly afterwards as we've heard their voices, seen their faces and interacted with them. It feels natural to want to know what other groups are up to, thinking about where we sit among this network. Through the work of our engagement team, we've enabled groups to hear each other's stories. What has emerged out of the stories of transition, we feel a number of our goals have been achieved. It's been very inspiring to hear from the different groups around the country and to learn about all the different activities and projects that they have held over the years. Connections are made between individuals who go on to later contact one another after the talks if they would like to learn more about a particular project or topic. Next slide. In time, we have now created a great resource, as each talk is recorded and uploaded as a video on the Transition Australia YouTube channel, allowing people to review stories that they may have missed or are interested by. The Stories of Transition allows people within the movement in Australia to feel part of the bigger picture. It helps you not feel like you are struggling away on your own or that what you are doing is ineffective. Hearing stories where speakers admit that they themselves are finding it difficult to keep their groups going or motivated is reassuring for people to know that they are not alone in these feelings, or seeing another group's successes gives you encouragement to have a go as well. In a broader sense, we feel the stories are fulfilling multiple goals, freely sharing information and providing support for those helping to build community resilience around Australia. We encourage others within the transition movement around the world to try a similar practice as our stories of transition. It has been a great motivator and stimulator of new ideas to be spread broadly throughout the world. If anyone has any questions, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, next we're going to hear from Kit, who will lead us in a quick break, and then she will summarise some of the projects, themes and practices of the different transition groups who we've heard from in the Stories of Transition sessions so far. Thanks, Kit.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. I note there are a few people coming in as well. It would be good if the new people could add to their name where they're located. Obviously, because of the time zone, we're getting people from China, Japan, New Zealand. Interesting to feel our commonality in latitude like that. So the music break, it's about 1 to 3 minutes, Paul. I'm not quite sure how we're going to time this, but I can shout out after 2 minutes to bring you back.
We'll just play through the music, I think, Kit.
Okay, so when the music ends,
2.5 minutes, I think.
righto. See you at the other end.
When you're here, I feel like you're more than me. You and I were close as you're sure to see. When you're with me, I can walk taller than all the ones who told me I'm smaller than. When you're here, there's nothing that we can't do. You can count on me if you want me to. So I sing it forever. And ever, and ever, and ever, and ever, until that you see that. Together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. We are together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. In the night when I'm feeling all alone, in my darkest hour when we're standing strong, by my side when all I need is a friend. You're my heart when I need to dance again. You're my eyes when I don't see anything. When they tell me stop, you're my voice that sings. So I sing it forever and ever and ever and ever and ever until that you see that. Together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. And we are together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. So I sing this forever and ever and ever and ever and ever until that you see that. Together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. Together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. Together, together, we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. We are together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. Together, 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 we do what no one can do. We are together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. Together, 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 we do what no one can do, we do no one can be. Together, together, we do what no one can do, we do no one can be.
Yes, I'm going to be talking about the content of the projects that Peter has just described, the structure of and the history. I'll mention quite a number of projects, and then we'll have a burst of images. And then the same again, I'll speak about a number of practices and a burst of images, and then looking at themes as well. So yeah, you'll be listening and then you'll be watching. So the projects, of course, and many of them, of course, are in common with our transition groups, but each group's context is particular, given that we live in this large country and the groups span across the different states that we have here: New South Wales, Tasmania, Western Australia, and Victoria and Queensland. That means some on the coast, some inland, some next to forests, some urban, some in farmland, towns with farmland. And the climate zones are very different, and the time zones. So yeah, Zoom has been a great boon for us. So projects, of course, include gardens, things like community gardens with seed libraries, thinking about food security, for example, food miles and food swaps. There's also education projects, education nights. We have a guest dinner in Bondi. There's book clubs, film nights, festivals, and workshops where people can learn skills and information. There are projects that focus on waste, for example, food waste or plastic waste. In Australia, we have a designated day called Clean Up Australia Day, which brings together the whole community and collects a lot of rubbish from all sorts of locations, land and sea. There are projects that focus around renewable energy. For example, encouraging people to get solar panels on their roofs or to buy electronic cars, and to encourage people in their home lives to be living in an efficient way as regards using energy. Some groups put on projects that we would cluster under the headings the circular economy, for example, through share and repair cafes or boomerang bags. Boomerang bags, the name boomerang is an Aboriginal weapon which is thrown and then comes back. So the bags are made with the intention that they will come back. People pick up the boomerang bags at the supermarket and then hopefully bring them back for someone else to use. Then there are projects particularly focusing on skills like fermenting. One group had a number of cabbages, a bumper crop of cabbages, and ended up doing a sauerkraut making session in the town hall with a whole lot of their community. People make other wonderful things in the fermenting area, cheeses and pickles and drinks. Textile waste is another issue of concern, and we hear of a number of projects on that theme. For example, mend and remake sessions where you're not throwing away your old clothes but fixing them, giving them a longer life. And using, for the boomerang bags, using offcuts of fabric to make something beautiful and new. There are groups that promote active transport, children walking together. I think it's called a walking bus, and cycle repair groups. Those who are in the country have some lovely outdoor group examples, specifically trying to get people away from their screens and their indoor lives. One group promotes a fundraising event. I think that person is here with us today. It's such an evocative title, and some of the labels of these projects really spark our imagination and let us imagine how we might also try out new things. There's a really, really free market that one group did, which certainly attracted people. It was a market stall, but they wanted to gather people around a local issue that needed support. Other market stalls are very common among our networks, where people give away seedlings. They might give away seeds and of course engage people listening and talking about projects and programs that are coming up. At such a market stall, one young girl set herself up to draw portraits of people's animals. So she was drawing people's cats and dogs, which I thought was a very sweet and attractive thing to do at a community market. Then there are groups that do tree planting, those who promote and plant Indigenous food crops, food and fibre gardens. There's a group in Western Australia that focuses on the topic of death, dying and mourning, an education and support group. And another group there looking and promoting us all engaging in peace and social justice. And not only in environmental groups, we see men's groups that bring together a particular sector of the community. Let's have a look at some pictures now that you will perhaps recognise some of those names. It's lovely just to see them. I can't help but smile when I see the photos that we have extracted from our YouTube film of these groups. So you will no doubt want to tap into some of those films. There's going to be a link at the end of our session. So just to broaden it out, there are themes that we might also be able to extract from the particular projects. One theme is inner transition and resilience. Active Hope is a program that I think Paul will talk more about. That's very valuable. Nonviolent communication, another aspect of inner transition. Sharing good times across the board. We hear people having festivals, bringing different ages together, allowing creativity. There are choirs and book clubs that have people gathering and enjoying each other's company while they're focusing on their shared concerns. Rural issues include being concerned about industrial activity like forestry and lithium mining. In Australia, a lot of animals were wounded in the bushfires, and there are groups that have developed about rescuing and protecting animals. So biodiversity is the concern there. There are agricultural shows as well, very commonly in Australia. Some groups focus on political engagement, advocating certain political activity, holding panels for pre-election candidates. You saw a picture of a drumming group. They decided to start drumming after doing a lot of projects that were focusing more on what the individual can do. But the drumming, they thought, would put them into the situation where they could try and support systems change on a bigger scale. And those drums were made out of the tough buckets that you see, and they've just painted them and attract a lot of young people and those who want to have a bit of fun while we are talking about serious topics. Some other themes are partnering with local organisations as well as councils, intergenerational engagement through the various fun activities I've mentioned, creative and festive ones, and also specific intergenerational discussion groups and community, community picnics and meetings. There's community development that's a focus in one of the groups, especially in Tasmania. This was addressing isolation and unemployment, the issue of a sense of purpose for those who are marginalised, and setting up a program that was about something like the UBI, Universal Basic Income, having an income by doing transition style activities. That's a project that's underway. Two more themes: the sharing economy, as in food banks, clothes swaps, and seed swaps. And climate mitigation is an important theme around the floods, the fires, and the heat events that we've had in Australia. So again, let's look at some pictures and see if those themes can be seen. And the second last segment, I've headed under the title Practice, part of the title of our event, this 24-hour transition network, larger event that we're all part of. So there are ceremonial events. For example, we heard of a reverence ritual, a fire choir during the bushfires, women's grieving circle in the forest, song share groups, sound circles, and again, the Active Hope Spiral. There are seasonal and cyclical events. I've mentioned Clean Up Australia Day. Some groups run as allies to First Nations people here. They run annual gatherings to note and connect across the particular dates to do with the colonial history here. There are harvest festivals, for example, equinox activities. And some groups have one big event every year, a festival, for example, or a theme for their newsletter each month. There are walks that have particular themes. Walking is a big thing in our organisations, I would say. Native garden walks, bee walk shops, again, an evocative title. Biodiversity walk and talk groups. And there was a particular group who did a Finding Our Heart story walk, which was actually a walk around a primary school where enlarged posters were made about the referendum and the lead up to the referendum in Australia last year. There was a book called Finding the Heart story, and the book was then made available as a learning resource at this primary school. There are smaller, we might call them practices, hacks of a practical nature. One is a group that produces party hosting kits. And yeah, another one, yes, the fundraising stall. There are social practices, meeting with local networks at different cafes, or people working in each other's gardens rotationally each month. There are community dinners with games, performances and soirees. Yeah, I think I'll leave that there. There are some more pictures to illustrate some of those things. Sorry,
We'll have an
okay.
example of one of the talks just for a couple of minutes. Sorry.
Yes, good.
Thanks so much for having me here today. I will also try and keep to time. Really excited to talk to you about the project that I'm currently working on, Pocket City Farms. Out here is beyond our fence is our verge, and that was 180 metres squared of oleander. And that was removed and turned into a community food forest. So that's been a really beautiful part of what we do. I'm going to talk about the 3 pillars that Pocket City Farms is based on. That's fair food and education and community. And so first of all, fair food, Emirates Ag wanted to showcase food, how it's grown, and do it organically, make sure that people were really connected with how it's grown seasonally, really passionate about miles and how far has your food traveled to get to you. In this instance, we're really thrilled to have the restaurant on site because we can take from food miles right down to sort of food meters in terms of getting some of that food onto plates. We're really passionate about food that's good for the farmers. So, being right in the middle of the city, paying farmers a fair award wage is really crucial to us so they can afford to live in the city. It's also food that's really good for the people who eat it. So it is seasonal. It's grown according to organic certification, but we're not certified. It's very expensive to be certified organic, and we also really strongly believe that the people dousing our food in chemicals should be the ones who are certified, not us. And we're a very visible site, so people can come and check out what we're doing and at any point, and they can also volunteer to become involved and see how we do what we do. We grow 99% of the food on our farm from a seed that either goes into a greenhouse that we've got on site or directly into the ground. Very occasionally would buy seedlings in, but mostly we're showcasing that whole life cycle of plants. And then we're also really passionate about food that's accessible to the local community. I've got some slides coming up later on, but we want to make sure that this isn't just food that's inaccessible and that isn't available to the local community. So we sell online. People can go online and order little veggie bags from us. We also have an honesty store where any surplus produce that's produced on the farm goes out, and it's pay what you can afford. People can take it for free, or people pay a small donation through a really awesome app called My Honesty Box. We sell a little bit to restaurants and cafes and caterers. And then we've recently become involved in an organic buyers group, which is a scheme started in Randwick in Sydney. And it's just fantastic. For $45, people get a box of organic veg. The community bands together. They turn up, they pack it, and we sell some Pocket City Farms produce into that, and the rest is bought from a wholesaler. So they're getting about $80 worth of organic value for $45, which is, bringing it on par with the prices people are paying at supermarkets or less. Another thing we're really passionate about is education. And as I said at the start, Emirates Ag really wanted to showcase, how food's grown and reconnect kids with how food's grown. For a lot of kids, when we're talking about regenerative agriculture, it's something that's really far away and it's hard for them to go and see. So we love really bringing that right back to what can we do on site. And we hope that every student who comes through our school excursion programs leaves with an increase in eco-literacy, understanding the importance of growing seasonally, growing locally, what we can, understanding that soil needs to be covered and that we, really can regenerate our soils with our farming practices.
Great, thank you. Good. Just very quickly, and then we'll have a screen break and Paul will talk. There are two other things that we do. One is a conversation cafe and a Zoom dinner where people come with their drink or their meal and connect in a more relaxed way, and some people can come for the first time to see who we are in the transition movement. So that's usually on a Sunday night, highly recommended. And the other key thing that we do actually is co-working. Three of us meet every week on a Thursday morning to do our work, the sometimes boring and isolating work of administration. We do it in our own spot, but we connect on Zoom every 20 minutes. So we really love that process, get a lot done with the little deadlines that we set for ourselves and the reporting back to each other in the breaks in between. Okay, that's it from me.
Thanks so much for having me here today.
All right, so we're just going to have a short screen break just to give you a little bit of a time to think about what you've heard. And when we come back from the screen break, we're going to have a little breakout room a little bit later, we'll have a breakout room to talk about what you're hearing, what's standing out for you, and what sort of might work in your space. But the next little screen break is just a local artist for you just to listen to and take a couple of minutes, stand up, walk around, stretch, do whatever you need to do, and we'll come back when the music finishes.
All we could be. All we know, all that we see. All we are, all we could be. Change is change. Some of them might wanna fuck with your program, pay them no mind, don't let them waste your time. Haters have a habit of acting like quicksand. Cherish all the sunlight when it gets dark. Build yourself a fire and burn down the area. No excuse justifies a life not lived, a life unexamined or a sheep mentality. Read a lot, see a lot, break down reality. Investigate the goings on inside, outside, whatever you choose to put your time into. Make sure you give it every single fiber of your being, cause life is but the moment, life is but a dream. And sure enough, all of us will have to move along. So here's a few thoughts for you to mull on. Come on, you are not the first and you won't be the last. All we are, all we are, all we could be. All we know, all that we see. All we are, all we are, all we could be. All we know, all alone, all out at sea. Come when it calls. Run from nothing at all. Come when it calls. Run from nothing at all. Ocean, yeah, my 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 ocean.
Australian elements. And I guess I just wanted to use this time to talk a little bit about Transition Australia. And I'd be fascinated if there are other people from countries that have national hubs, how what we are doing is different to what they are doing. So Transition Australia as the national hub started up with the view to helping different groups, connecting different groups, and basically making it easier for the groups in local areas to spend more time doing the things that they wanted to, and spend less time creating new resources or reinventing the wheel or finding how to link or how other groups have done things. So our big aim is to try and connect and synergize and encourage local groups to spend more time in the local area doing things that are powerful, and a lot of the sort of things that we've heard today. So those are great activities, but often what we found is that it's hard to share those stories, and I think everyone would probably agree that the stories are actually as important as the actions, because they propagate and encourage and catalyze other actions, and it can feel very much like a family. So I'm just going to pick a couple of little things that Transition Australia has done, just to again see that idea. And one of the things that we do is hold convergences. Now, it's as with many places in the world, COVID knocked us around a little bit. So the last convergence that we had was in 2019. And the convergences range from, they can be local convergences where people are coming together. We've had state convergences. Australia is broken into 5 states and 2 territories. And the last one in 2019 was actually a national convergence. So we had a hub in, which you can see on the screen, in Melbourne, where we had different people coming and joining us, but we also had 5 other convergences happening concurrently. So we had one in Sydney, and we had one in Tasmania, and we had one in South Australia and Perth. And I think there's a couple of others as well. and we were able to connect with them. And one of the big things that enabled us to do was to feel like we weren't alone in the journey of transition, and that we actually were part of a bigger story. And I think that was very, very powerful. So I'm just going to quickly show you, it's just a 2-minute little video to give you an idea about some of the things and some of the characteristics and of what the convergence is all about. And you can see there that a couple of things come out. It's not all transition towns badged groups. Transition Australia actually encourages people who follow what we call like a transition culture, who are doing localized, sustainable, ecologically regenerative actions in their local space. We don't think that the badging is actually as important as helping actions happen locally. So you see there were local councillors, there were other organisations like Drawdown and XR who we invite to be part of that conversation, to share, and very much encourage people to find the space where they are happy to sort of lean into. You see that we try and walk the walk. So we have composting, we have reusable cutlery, we have all things that we are encouraging people to do, and also we encourage fun. And we've already talked a little bit about fundraising, but it is super important to make sure that we don't just nourish the mind in learning things, but we also nourish the heart in terms of connection. And one of the lovely things in these convergences is just the level of smiles and conversation that happens. And we really want to, I guess, encourage throughout this entire presentation that this is about community glue and community connection, and how important going forward when things are tough, how important that community glue is to build before things become difficult, when things are difficult, and after things are difficult. Australia, as many of you know, has quite a lot of climactic droughts and flooding rains is the sort of the poetic version of it. And one of the things that a lot of the emergency services have realised is that groups and localities are quicker to recover and have less impacts of these natural disasters if they are held together. So we are very much about supporting groups to do that sort of community glue. Some of the ways that also we do, some of the ways we do this, and I'm not going to talk a lot about this because I wasn't actively involved in this one, but following the Joanna Macy sort of ideas of Active Hope and the work that reconnects, this is done again online because Australia is so huge. It was one of the programs about building that hope and building that inner transition and building that resilience through the Active Hope Spiral and the work that reconnects Spiral, and that was really popular and very, very well received. We've also done, as was mentioned, some other stuff about resilience and how we can support the inner transition to develop not only our own resilience, but also our interconnected resilience, our collective resilience, by sharing, supporting, connecting, and embedding that sort of narrative of active hope in all the things that we do. This is a bit of a terrible slide, but we've had our share of things, and it's fascinating I guess, see. I was involved as part of the emergency services in some of the Black Friday things, and really quickly it was local community groups who were doing simple things like delivering, milk and newspapers that really helped people feel held and feel supported. So that's some of the things that we do. Just in terms of Transition Australia also has a website where we put all of these stories together. We have newsletters, we have lots and lots of resources, which are all completely free. And we actively encourage groups to take those and use those for their space so that they don't have to do the legwork to recreate those things. And we are always very receptive to people asking about, could this happen? So lots of our resources and connections and events and local groups are held on that website. And what we really want people to do is to feel like if they're feeling the passion to do something, they can find their nearest people or the people who are sharing that passion without having to feel like I might be the only one feeling this thing or wanting to do this. We've also got a Transition Australia Facebook group. We've got the YouTube channel, because it's all about narrative and it's all about connecting people together. And I'm going to stop talking, which, is a rare thing for me, and hand back to Peter, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Just thought, just by rounding off as well, I just wanted to mention that, our stories of transition are evolving as well. We've taken a lesson from a lot of the groups who have spoken in the stories of transition about the need for change. So even the stories of transition are changing as well. So this year we've started basing our sessions on themes. So for example, our last session in early April was based on community land use, and our next session in July will be about libraries of things and repair cafes. And the range of activities that Transition and other related groups, the activities that they undertake are wonderfully broad, and it's good to tap into that. We're very happy that we started Stories of Transition for myself and the team. Some of the highlight successes include how inspired and excited all the participants are at the end of each session, and how many of them seek to further communicate with each other and the speakers in future. The rich variety of projects, people and stories help to make the Stories of Transition and hopefully the transition movement itself a great success. Thank you.